Welcome to part 6 of my Substance Painter for Beginners Paint a Monster series guide. So what we're going to be doing, we pretty much finished the inside. You can see this is the before and the after. So what we're going to be doing is painting the shell now, the egg shell. So we have this fill color, which is great because we can actually use that and just duplicate it so that when we make any new changes to our new layers, they'll already have the mask that we need. So what we'll do, actually what we'll do is we'll do this. We'll create a folder. We will add a black mask. We will copy the mask of the fill. So just go down to copy mask, right click on the new mask, paste into mask. So now this folder is masked completely. So this folder will only affect the what's masked. So when we create a new fill layer, and we put it in this folder, it will only affect the masked sections. So now that we have this, what we can do is we can begin painting new details onto this section here inside the folder. So what I'll do is create a new fill color. Let's say we want to do the highlights of the rocky egg because it's going to be kind of like volcanic rock. We'll call this, or no, we'll do midtones. We'll do midtones. So midtones. We will turn off everything except for color, and the color will just be kind of slightly brighter, still mostly grayscale with a little bit of red mixed in, dark gray type color. We can right click midtones, add a black mask. That's what we're going to be painting on. And then we can also add height. So what we'll do is we will increase the height by 0.02. So very subtle height increase so that when you're painting it, as light hits it, it'll have some kind of visible texture you can see. And then we'll bring up the shelf, window, views, shelf if it's closed. It's always nice to have it open 100% of the time on the other screen while you're painting. So we want a nice brush to paint kind of like a rocky surface. So let's kind of see what might look good. Maybe something like this. Some of these brushes are more demanding than others in terms of resources, so let's just kind of experiment just to see what result we get. Alright, so that kind of gives us this cloudy, it's pretty quick. Some brushes are fast, some are slower. For whatever reason, it just depends on how the brush is. Most brushes are pretty quick to render. I think one thing I need to change right away though is the roughness on this eggshell, because now that it's rocky, it shouldn't be so reflective. So let's do like 0.7. So now it appears to be more rocky inherently. So that's good. Let's go back to midtones. So the brush we're using is cloudy, what is it? Kyle's Real Soft Irregular Wash Variant. All right, so there's your brush. Now, if you don't have this brush for whatever reason, just use something similar. It's basically just like a soft round brush with some texture. Okay. So we want to make sure we have these enabled. And we can start painting. So we'll do big areas first. So we'll just kind of hit up like large areas for now. I might change the brush a bit. Let me reduce the flow. Let's try this. All right, so I reduced the flow by a lot. I want to make sure I don't get like weird details I don't want. All right, so far it looks okay. It's almost like an airbrush. And I'll probably erase parts of it as we're going. But for now, I just want to get like some midtones on there. So I'm just kind of painting up some sections. I think we will be doing a bit of erasing because I don't like how parts of the edges look. And And I might change the color slightly as well. But that's why we're working with fill layers, so that you can change everything if you don't like it. I want most of this to be more towards the top and on the top, and less on the bottom. So like as it goes down, I don't want as much. Alright, so then for the bottom, I don't want to get underneath it too much, but like the sides somewhat. So like this to some degree, we'll just kind of paint along that. So that way we're basically leaving in dark details where it looks like it should be shaded. And we'll go behind for the back. On the other side. And we can always refine this mask as well. So this is just like kind of a base layer to get us started. All right, so the first thing I want to do is change the color of this, I think. Let's see if we can get it looking better. So you just click on the fill layer itself. Right now it's saving. So click on the fill layer, adjust the color here. You try different things. You can try like slight purple. Because if everything's kind of like a red tone, this is actually more blue. If everything's kind of like red, that could be boring. And you know, different materials, they can have different like secondary color properties. So like you have like different hints of color and things. So now that we've changed this to blue, I think it looks much better. Okay, so we have this much nicer looking mid-tone range. I think for these shadows, what I'll do, I'm gonna do two things. I think I want to do lava. So I'm not gonna touch these inside parts yet, like the cracks. So I think what we'll do is go back to midtones, and then let's select a different brush for emphasis. So let's try this. Let's get a brush that's kind of like mostly straight and together. I do really like this brush. It's just nice, I think. It's kind of achieves what we want. So let's go back. All right, let's check out what it looks like currently. All right, so it still has like a smooth look to it. That's the artistic heavy sponge. I almost wanted to call it heap brush, but it's the heavy sponge. So it's this one right here. So let's see. One thing I will do also is increase the height. Let's try 0.1. Okay, that's better. Just to give us a little bit more height to create some texture while we're adding highlights, like separating these parts. All right, so what I want to do is kind of like touch up some of the edges like this. I don't want it to go over too much, but I want most of the edges to appear sharper, so I want them to have a little bit of brightness to them. And we're also adding a little bit of texture in as we're going to those edges. And we can always increase the brush size and start adding in soft details to kind of merge the new edge details with the overall shape. So like right now, this is like almost like a hard edge, and then I can increase the size and just kind of like blend it in. So that way it's not as harsh. Now, if you are a game developer or just someone who's working on an indie game, we do have stock models for sale. They're on a Sketch, or not a Sketchfab, a TurboSquid account that's linked in the description. Right now, we're just making furniture, like low poly furniture. And by low poly, I mean like it has like a semi-realistic appearance, but it's low poly. So if you're interested in that, they're pretty cheap models. They're pretty high quality. We have Unreal, Unity, and base textures, and like every resolution up to 4K. So like 256, 512, 1K, 2K, 4K. So you can kind of customize the performance. But we're getting, the 3D bros are going hard on making stock models. We already have 15 made. So definitely check those out. But yeah, we're obviously going to be making a lot of tutorials, so just worth mentioning. We might do shirts at some point. I don't know. We'll see. Shirts for artists. Maybe we'll develop some memes as the channel grows. Who knows? You never know. But right now, we're just refining the edge for emphasis, so that it looks nice and cracked to some degree. And let's actually look at it so you can see the difference. So here's with and without. Let's like zoom out. And we're gonna add highlights along the edges as well. So for now, it's not gonna be as noticeable, but it's still noticeable. We are gonna be doing Unreal tutorials. I don't know about Unity. I'll do like importing assets into Unity, but I don't know that I'll do Unity tutorials. And the tutorials will all be geared towards art. So I guess I could do art tutorials for Unity. I just have to learn it. But I know Unreal Engine to some degree. I know how to do a lot of stuff in that. Like how to bring in models, optimize them, do landscape things. So we'll do tutorials on that as well. And I might get into blueprint tutorials, we'll see, like for like actual game development, depending on how things go. That might be something I want to do. But you can see here, now that I'm starting to add this little ridge in, I can actually add in little crack details, which is very nice. So you can actually manually add in these like crack details if you do it correctly. And then it appears to be sharper and more rocky, which is what the material should look like, because it's, you know, like a rocky egg. And we can kind of hit up these sections out here for a similar effect. And we can push and pull. We can use a new layer. In the next video, we'll use a new layer to push the height in. So we'll pull the height out and then push it in and create nice, like extra details, like cracks in the surface. You can also kind of add in details by doing stuff like this. Anywhere where it sticks out, you can add in. So you can kind of see that it's adding these like ridges now. And the sculpt, like when you sculpt that in, it helps you for when you texture, because when you bake it, you now have details to work off of. Otherwise, you're kind of just like making details up on the model, which can be tricky. But if you do most of the work in the sculpt, it can save you a lot of time and energy. So for now, I'll just go over these. And I'll try to break them up as well. Okay, we gotta get this. Gotta get this guy done. And obviously even this type, like in the case of this brush, decreasing the size makes it a little bit more precise, which is true for every brush, but for the brushes that have scattering and randomness to them, the bigger it is, the more crazy it is. So, and by that I mean like the more random the effect is. So in this case, it's kind of bumpy along the edges, which is fine because we don't want it to be too perfect. I want it to have like still the appearance of being like rocky, so I don't mind that. We're gonna blend these in too. I'm not just gonna leave these details like this by themselves. They're gonna be kind of blend it in like so. We can hit up the top a little bit. Another thing to note too is if you start like painting over, you can see there it kind of like reduces the effect of the sharpness if you just start adding height from the same layer in this case. So you got to be a little careful with your details. You don't want to just start like spamming stuff randomly. You basically never want to do that. You want to make sure you know why you're doing what you're doing when it comes to painting, texturing, sculpting, modeling. 3D modeling is pretty complicated too. There's a high skill ceiling in that. Just like getting the topology looking good. It also helps the animator out. It makes everything easier if the topology is good. You can texture faster, animate easier. Your model's lower poly, which makes it perform better in most game engines. So there's definitely a lot to learn for 3D. Quite a bit. And as far as game development is concerned, the thing with game development is you want to basically just develop a skill and then find the other people who make up for what you lack. So like if you try to learn everything, it's going to be very difficult. You can do it, it's just very difficult and time consuming, and I want to emphasize that because I've had some experience with that. So solo development work, pretty crazy. Shouldn't do it. I honestly regret trying it. Like I solo dev'd a few games and you know, it was not worth it. You're much better off learning a skill and then trying to get a team together who want to work on a similar type of game as you. That's way easier. Much easier to do. So the problem with solo dev is you probably won't develop all the skills you need fast enough. So like let's say it takes you 3,000 hours per skill, right, to master it, or to get to a level where it's good enough to make money off of selling a game. So like 3,000 hours of doing art, that's like at least 1 to 2 years if you're like grinding it out, and that's assuming that's like all you're doing like as a full-time job. And you're probably not going to be making money doing it yet because you need to have like a certain level of quality and skill to make money doing anything. Same thing with coding. You're looking at like at least a few thousand hours. Same thing with like music, sound effects, even game design. Like people, I think most people assume they can design a game. Game design is a skill, and it is a skill that is difficult. It is not easy to come up with an interesting game that people want to play and design it well and implement those mechanics well. So game design in of itself, like just getting to the finished game is a lot of work. Like just shipping it, and that's like half the battle. The other half is marketing it and getting people interested and having like a good premise. There's a lot to talk about for game design, but for now we'll just kind of resume painting our egg guy. So just as before, we're just going along the edges with this brush, adding in midtones and some like some little micro detail as we're painting, which is nice because of the height map on our fill layer. So fill layers are extremely powerful in Substance, and even for hand painting, I think they're the best thing. I think they're far superior to just normal paint layers because of the editability. Like if I want to change these midtones or duplicate them and then modify them and do all these different things, I can. Whereas with like a non-masked layer, can't make those changes so easily. As they say in the Rush song Tom Sawyer, those changes are permanent. That's actually not what they say. It's they aren't permanent. All right, let's get some of these. Let's get some of these edges here. I want to get like these as well. So we're almost done. We're almost to the next stage. which is good. I think I want to do lava for the parts that are cracked. So we're going to do that. We're going to add emissive, and then we'll finish with like importing into game engine. So if you want the whole process, that's one thing that I had a hard time with when I first started 3D art, was just finding like how do I take something from ZBrush and get it into like Unreal Engine or Unity. And in this tutorial series, I will actually show that. And I started from ZBrush. I showed like basic UVing. Now there's better ways to UV than the way I showed. It's just kind of like a quick way. The result is good for props. For characters, you probably want to actually UV it correctly in like Blender or something. But there are more advanced ways to UV in ZBrush I'll cover in a future video as well. But for now, we gotta paint this guy. It's gotta look good. So like once you understand like what you're doing as far as like a process, you can then like reuse that and break things down into repeatable steps and always improve this process. So like if there's something that works better for you, you find like a cool way to do a certain thing faster, you can always add that to your skill set. Let's hit up some of these edges. All right, we're almost done with this stage, and you'll see the result. I'll zoom out so you can see, and then we'll like toggle it. I think it's important to show like what effect the painting has on the model with each video, so that you can see why we're doing what we're doing, because it adds to this like overall result. And the nice thing about like being deliberate with your strokes, like you can add little details like that. Like if I put it everywhere, you're not going to see that difference. But if I put it in some sections and not others, you will see little bits of texture popping up just from adding these midtones, which is very convenient. Basically, it's all about the height map. And then we're painting on a height map, right? So like having these textured brushes while we're painting adds texture detail. Because essentially texture is just like a surface. It's a surface with colors, or with color and physical properties. Like that's the easiest way to think about it. So you just need to be able to break things down, right? I'll do a separate video on that for like how to identify what you need in a texture. Because it's actually a logical process, which is nice. Because like I think a lot of people assume that art is like this mystic thing that you're either born good at it or you're not. But it's really just a skill you learn, and you just need to learn certain things. And once you know those things, you can apply that knowledge to create different types of art. So just knowing that it's just a process that you can repeat, I think will help. Because like what am I doing right now? I'm painting on high areas, midtones, like on higher areas with a brighter color to make those areas appear to be brighter and higher in elevation. Which makes sense because like, you know, they're being hit by light, right? So like this part would be brighter than the darker part in the crevice, for example. Let's hit up this area a little bit more. All right, I think we're good on this. Let's kind of just look around, look for any areas that look weird or bad. You always want to do that when making changes to a model. We can check out the top. Maybe the top should have more. This probably won't be easy to see, but I'm just painting in little areas up here. All right. So let's look at the before and after. First we'll save it. You always want to save every like 5 to 10 minutes. because if something crashes, which can happen, then you don't lose that much progress. All right, so here's the difference. And you can especially see it in some areas like down here where there's still height difference. And what we can do before we finish is we'll put this on black to paint, to mask out, and we can actually paint in height now. So essentially what we're doing is we're just erasing what we painted earlier, but by using like a large brush, we can add like subtle little details all in the same layer, which is very nice. So that if you did spam it in some parts, you can take away. So you can add and subtract just like with sculpting. In this case, we're subtracting just to give some parts a little bit of textured surface. We'll just go through with like a big brush and just hit up certain areas. Just kind of lightly, don't do too hard, don't do too crazy. Just light little details to pull away. And you can also reduce the brush size to make like more specific changes that are more noticeable. Because like the way these textured brushes work is the larger they are, the more broad or the more vague they are, because it scatters all the details. So when you take, so like here's like huge brush, here's like small brush, you can see that like the micro detail it adds is drastically different. This is more broad and spread out. This is more like cracked and refined. So you can add those details in. It's totally fine to do that. But just be aware of that when using textured brushes. It's something that took me like a little while to notice. Because you think, oh, I'm just increasing and decreasing the brush size. It's like, well, that's true to like obvious, like that is what you're doing, but you're also changing the way the brush works. Because like if I just use like a soft or hard round brush, the only difference is the scale. That's it. But like with textured brushes, there's more to it than just the scale. The scale influences the pattern, which influences the result. So very important to know that. And we can add more little details. That. All right, I think that's pretty good for now. So this is just the midtones layer. We haven't even done highlights. We haven't done shadows. We haven't done the lava and the cracks, which is what I want to do. So we're going to add a missive. I'll show how to do that. So that's it for this one. Definitely like and subscribe if you found this useful or enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next video.